Mullinger's Weekly Ramble.
Hello, my friends. It is Wednesday, the 17th of September. That's right, September. Sorry, I almost said April then. That's a good start. 3 words in, getting the date wrong. Why do I always get the date wrong, even when I'm staring at the date? I think what it is, I'll tell you what it is. It's because I've been saying 17th of April a lot in the last week, because that is the date of my big Halifax show next year, which I've been, I guess, nervously promoting and announcing this past week. Very big room, big gamble, something I've been thinking about doing for years, then finally mustered the confidence to book it, and then was having many sleepless nights about it. So basically, point being, I've been saying 17th of April a lot in the past week, but it's not 17th. It's okay, what a waste of a minute. What a waste of a minute, James. If you're tuning into Mullinger's Weekly Ramble for the very first time, I'd like to say this is the kind of crap that you're not going to have to listen to again. But you are, frankly. This is the show. This is as good as it gets. I have moments ago, I just had the most wonderful and hilarious phone call from Steve Patterson. Of course, Steve Patterson is currently on his way out of St. John, heading to Charlottetown, where we're recording a episode of The Debaters tomorrow night in Charlottetown at the Confederation Centre of the Arts. I have a very wonderful subject that I'm very much looking forward to doing, and debating with one of my favourite comedians. It's wonderful. And last night was no exception. Thank you, by the way, to everyone who packed the Imperial Theatre, brought so much energy, laughing and cheering and clapping for possibly close to 4 hours. It was a long one. That's what she said. And it was magical. Peter White and I kicked things off. Peter White, one of the best comedians around. I would say one of the very few comedians, correct me if I'm wrong on this, one of the very few comedians from the Maritimes to go to London / the UK and essentially conquer it there. Peter White was one of the, there's only a handful of people that kind of make it to Comedy Store weekend level. I never did, and possibly never will. He went there already as a highly skilled, highly brilliant comic from Nova Scotia, who had then cut his teeth on the Toronto scene, become a headliner in Toronto, then moved to the UK for many, many years, and fairly quickly, is that fair to say? I don't know. But essentially, it is so good that he became a full-blown headliner / weekend comedian at all the big clubs. Moved home at some point. Again, I don't know his full bio. I'm basically just telling you the things that I remember. The point being, he absolutely balls of steel. Came to debate in favour of St. John's and anti-St. John in St. John. Not many people would take on that debate. We had a lot of fun working on this together. The whole night was absolutely electric, and it's always just so nice. The last time we had the debaters here in St. John was actually 2019. Some of the same people. That was the night where I believe, was one of the first people ever to do 2 in one night. That is a stressful experience. I did one with Peter Anthony at the beginning, and then at the end of the show with Derek Seguin. I'm going up against Derek Seguin Derek Seguin has done the debaters more times than any other person in history, which I believe it is. I had lunch with Derek and his wonderful girlfriend Angela yesterday lunchtime at Mix Bar at the Delta, and I believe I'm correct in saying he's done more than 65 debates. He also has the highest percentage of wins ever. Not that it's about winning, obviously. It's a comedy show. The winning is in the laughter. That's why when, for example, tomorrow night I have a subject I'm not going to win. I'm not, just like Peter White. was not going to win St. John. That's not what it's about. It's about the laughter. So you work together to create the funniest debate. That's the win. And again, there's the one thing about Canadian comedies is not actually, there's competitiveness, healthy competitiveness, but there's not ruthless ambition. And because, like you get ruthless ambition in America and in England, because there are riches to be had, there are spoils to be enjoyed. In Canadian comedy, there is absolutely no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There isn't even a rainbow. There's no rainbow. There's no leprechauns. There is well, I guess a leprechaun is as real as a millionaire Canadian comedian. It's a fallacy. It's a myth. It's a fabrication. It is. If anyone is listening to this podcast who is getting into Canadian comedy for the money. For the money, literally do anything else. But if you're getting into it because you love comedy, you love making people laugh, you love working with really, really beautiful, kind, hilarious people who will do anything for you. If you like being in rooms full of misfits where every single person is so uniquely different, some are very loud and confident, some are very shy, some are all different races and you name it. There's every single a room full of people that could not be more different and diverse and yet have one thing in common, and that is that they love to make people laugh. And through this bond of choosing a career path that is never going to be easy and has no success at the end of it, you've created this bond. And as a result, I have this magical friend network that is unlike anything I think I could have got in any other profession. And I do believe that Canadian comedy is the best. And this is not just the comedians I'm really talking about. I'm talking about, across the board. It's the producers, it's the writers. I mean, last night is a perfect example. We're backstage at the Debaters. The last time I started to say this. Last time it was here in St. John was in 2019, where so some of the people that were here last night were obviously in that one, myself, Nikki Payne, Nathan McIntosh. I think we all know that our dear friend Tim would have definitely been part of this, but tragically passed. But he remains one of the most beloved, I would say, and genuinely one of the most beloved comedians in Canadian history. And it was very interesting when Tim Steeves passed, seeing the outpouring of tributes to him. I think Rick Mercer wrote one of the most beautiful tributes to Tim Steeves. Anyway, I think Nathan debated with Tim, and that was actually, I think, the last time I saw Tim in person. I believe 2 years after that, during COVID, we did. There was an amazing show that Marshall Button and Robert Gallant conceived called, was it Be in This Place? But it was essentially, Anyway, Nikki Payne and I hosted it, and some people kind of zoomed in. Tim was obviously in Toronto. Candy Palmater, who we also lost, actually, we lost Candy on Christmas Day a couple of years ago. Anyway, and God bless. I should also just say, God bless and rest in peace to another amazing person who I probably shouldn't necessarily name due to privacy reasons, but who she had. I believe we met for the first time at a gig in Shediac about 5 years ago, and she very kindly came to a show that I did in Dorchester last year. And met my dad, and she and her husband are just the kindest, sweetest, most lovely people. And I was due to see, I think I can say her first name, she won't mind. I'm sure her family won't mind. I was due to see Bet. Bet had actually booked tickets to my show on Monday night, and tragically, I believe, passed in the last 12 hours. Her daughter and friend did make it to the show on Monday night at Long Bay, and we made a video for her, and then a few hours later we lost it anyway. Rest in peace, Bet, and love you, and thank you for the years of friendship that we had. My point, I believe, I was trying to say was just that backstage at the debaters, when you work with the team there, Chloe, Nicole, Graham, Lee, and obviously Steve and everyone else. I mean, it really is just a family. And sorry, I've somehow lost 10 minutes. Last night's web was great. Tomorrow is going to be super fun. So I'm hot footing it to Charlottetown shortly, and then from Charlottetown, waking up Friday morning, driving to Campbellton for a show Friday night with Lynn Woods and Nathan McIntosh. And it's delightful. It's funny, this business, how you don't see people who you know and love and admire for years, and then suddenly you see them multiple times. Nathan McIntosh I have not seen in a few years, and have had the pleasure this month alone working with him in Cape Breton, St. John, and then we'll be in Campbellton together. Anyway, so Campbellton Friday and Saturday. And then I'll get the show stuff out of the way. Next week, I'm at the Kingston Farmers Market on Wednesday because living the dream. And Friday night, I'm at the Fredericton Playhouse, one of my favourite venues to perform every year. And I have two special guests at that show, Corey Hartlin and the amazing Mr. Brad Rice. So before I get tied up too much in, so that's all that. Anyway, the phone call that I just had with Steve Patterson, I will share the details of it next week, because right now, it would be spoiling something of a, well, it hasn't been resolved yet. The situation has not yet been resolved, so I don't want to talk about it or jinx it. But next week, tune in. If you imagine if someone's listening to this for the first time, they're probably going to think I'm an absolute lunatic. Well, I guess, see, if you've agreed to listen to this, you have accepted the role of therapist. And the great thing is that having ADHD means that I know what you're all thinking. So, because I think this is one of the things I've read somewhere, is that, you know how ADHD people always interrupt you in conversations? Like, you start a story and they immediately interrupt and start telling you about their often fairly tenuous example. Like, you literally start a story going, so I went to the farmers market this morning, and then an ADHD person will interrupt you and immediately start telling you a story about a farmer they met 20 years ago, and you're like, how is this connected and why are you interrupting me? It's because people with ADHD can read your minds, and our brains have gone through all 300 different scenarios in which your story ends. So they've not just heard the ending that you're likely to tell, they've also heard 299 other versions in their head. So already they're sick of your story. And actually also because we are blessed with cursed with extreme empathy. And I guess that is another thing with ADHD, is that you can't not constantly drive around or walk around or live or wake up without feeling overwhelming love and sympathy and empathy. And yes, you can have both, and I'm not getting into that, but if you know what I'm referring to. That is a mindful lie. I'm not getting into this last week has been a strange time, and I don't think I've ever experienced a time where my Facebook feed has appeared so spectacularly divisive, even through COVID, the murder of George Floyd. I have never. It's bizarre, and again, to see this as such an outpouring of opinions about a person I personally had not heard of a week ago was startling, terrifying, and I think really the only sensible thing, in my opinion, please let's keep the hate mail at a save the hate mail for when the debaters episode comes out. Will I ever be able to perform in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador ever again? I do hope so, because it was sorry, sidetrack. Is it called a sidetrack when you what is the? I mean, there's those words, isn't there? Sidetrack and tangent. But are they sidetracks and tangents when they're completely actually disconnected and you never come back to the original point? I don't know. One of the things I want to talk about in today's podcast is Spike Jonze, because I read a fantastic and fascinating interview with Spike Jonze in The Guardian last week. Was it even Spike Jonze? That is how. But my point was just going to be that it was this is a bit like a Spike Jonze movie. Is it Spike Jonze? Did he make Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless? Charlie Kaufman, or is it Kaufman? I don't know. Obviously not as great a director as my hero Lloyd Kaufman, which incidentally, Nathan McIntosh and I were talking last night about two of the greatest trauma movies of all time, obviously Toxic Avenger and Blades. As he rightly pointed out, Blades, a movie where someone ingeniously said, let's remake Jaws shot for shot, but replace a shark with a lawnmower. Well said. Lloyd Kaufman, greatest director of all time. We were talking about these trauma movies because the Toxic Avenger has been remade with Peter Dinklage as the Toxic Avenger, which is just the most genius casting. Obviously, love Dinklage, and it's amazing seeing someone with that kind of acting prowess and gravitas. And bringing it to what is essentially a trauma movie. Very frustrating, actually, reading reviews of the new Toxic Avenger movie and seeing a lot of critics not mentioning trauma. And I'm talking about you, Empire Magazine. How did you get, and they given it 3 or 4 stars, I believe. By all accounts, Toxic Avenger remake. Do you all know what the Toxic Avenger is? If you don't, message me, because we can't go on a 15th tangent. Anyway, read the interview with Charlie Kaufman about AI. Very, very interesting. Charlie Kaufman basically obviously made Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, won lots of awards, was a massive hit. They are talking, it's an interview with him about how and why his essentially career. So basically, he kind of says that he doesn't really understand. The guy doesn't understand why he doesn't have a career anymore. But essentially, he is determined to not. This is what he says. He says, "I guess if I directed something that made a fortune, that would help him get funding for projects." And the Guardian newspaper asked him, would it be intolerable for him to take on a movie he didn't believe in just to get the clout for his own projects? And he responded, I think the world is in a terrible, terrible situation right now. I don't think that Hollywood has nothing to do with it. I could argue that Hollywood has everything to do with it, and I have a responsibility, as I see it, not to put garbage in the world. Isn't that a beautiful thing? We all have a responsibility to not put garbage into the world. That could be some dog shit, Netflix, Prime, churned out, crappy, AI generated, cash cow excuse for a movie. It could be an opinion. It could be some meanness. It could be behavior. It could be a fart in a grocery store. Whatever it is, don't we all? Isn't that really the outcome of everything? Depending on where you sit politically, but I think most of you, we probably all, and by politically I mean morally, because I don't mean left and right. And of course, this is the thing that my takeaway from the past week is that this whole the left blaming the right and the right blaming the left mentality is not the thing. That's the thing that has been created by this isn't me. This isn't a conspiracy. This is just Kelly Lawson actually had the amazing photographer Kelly Lawson has a wonderful post about this, which I can't possibly explain this concept as eloquently as she did, but essentially it's all a distraction, isn't it? You know, all the things that happened last week. Meanwhile, the Epstein files thing gets buried once again. When I'm so very confused. Can any English listeners explain to me how? He who shall remain nameless has gone to the UK for the second state visit. London Mayor Sadiq Khan is continuing his tradition of having a pair of balls and actually speaking his opinions about what is morally right and correct in the world. Meanwhile, Charles and Camilla are rolling out the red carpet and getting on their hands and knees and bowing to a person who I don't think is that different to the devil. Again, That's not to say that anyone that voted for him is that way. And please know that again, I'm not getting political but my point is that it's the left and right thing is. Oh yes, I read this morning that someone. He is being hosted at Windsor Castle. I believe this has never happened before, where a president has been welcomed twice. So the royal family obviously love Donald Trump. And let's face it, they have a lot in common with Donald Trump. I mean, connections to Epstein being obviously one. But I think trying to understand the world and the powers is no longer the point. So anyway, isn't it I just thought that Charlie Kaufman's quote. I'll go back to it. And he makes I don't think that Hollywood has nothing to do with it. I could argue that Hollywood has everything to do with it. Again, I mean, I think Hollywood. Growing up as a movie fan, I hated anyone suggesting that violence in movies caused X, Y, Z. And again, that is a very old-fashioned. It's a very some could say, but well. He has a responsibility, as he says, not to put garbage in the world. I just thought, well, that's a really lovely way of looking at it. Let's all, I mean, again, you could take that literally, environmentally. It's amazing when I look at the amount of crap that we churn out every week. I'm like, if every household is turning out 6 bags of garbage, where is all this being buried? Again, I don't know. Let's all try and put less garbage in the world. He says if you start trying to figure out what it is that people want, you're going to do what AI does. The idea of AI precedes AI itself, because that's the Hollywood machine. It's why they remake the same 5 movies every 10 years. It's why they have a formula for what a movie is. And it is really quite sad when you think about how much we all love movies, that basically they are literally only made. The AI has basically been Hollywood's, even before AI existed, that what they do is AI. They just create what will make money, which again takes me back to the beautiful creativity, in my opinion, of Canadian comedy, which is because there is no money in it. It is all anyone does is create what they think will make people laugh. That's really my role, is stringing words together on a stage that will hopefully make people laugh and do so in a way, and this is my personal MO, that isn't going to alienate someone. Or so when multi-millionaire Tony Hinchcliffe sits on a stage getting laughs and jeers from frat boys laughing at a professional black female comedian who is extremely successful in her own in the country that she lives in her own country where she's from, but when they all make their money jeering at her and laughing at her and abusing her talent, that to me is not doing what comedy could and should be doing. Anyway, I have questions from you, which I was going to start with today, so I didn't get bogged down with anything else. So I put my diary to one side, and I'm now 22 minutes in. So I have questions from you, then I will do the diary, and then I will do other things. I had a meeting with someone last week who works in immigration to discuss a project that we're possibly working on. Have you heard this? This is the other weird thing about the whole about freedom of speech and the concept of cancelling. Isn't it so bizarre how one side has literally spent the last few years complaining that they can't say anything and that everyone's trying to cancel them, but now in the last week, as has been reported, dozens and dozens of people in America losing their jobs for expressing opinions / and by expressing opinions, I guess I mean literally quoting the words of a person, quoting actual words that a person actually said, and they're losing their jobs. So I'm going to move to something a bit more local. SPCA was on the news. I saw this on Global and CTV last week, that animal cruelty is through the roof in, I'm assuming this is in Atlantic Canada, 3,000 reports of animal cruelty in the past couple of months. I should also let you know that if anyone, just because I was told this by a lovely lady who works in immigration, that the SPCA in Grand Falls is being forced to close. So if anyone, due to lack of funding, so wherever all the money's going, it's not going there. So if anyone wants to help, let me know, because I would love to also help. what was I saw that golf. I was where was I? Oh, okay. Let's go to your questions and then we'll zip through everything. So, Charlotte Llewellyn, it says top fan above your name, which is very kind of you to either put that there or to Facebook to attribute that. As you know, in my opinion, there is no such thing as. Do you want to find? I find it so cringeworthy when a celebrity refers to their fans. Does anyone else feel that way? Now, I do get that. Like, I know I don't have fans. Um, I have friends, I have fellow ramblers, I have fellow boshers, I have fellow bish bash bosh sweeters and that lovely jubbly. We are all friends who share a sense of humour. That's what we all are. I've said that many, many times. I find it very weird and cringeworthy when I hear other comedians refer to any audience member as a fan. I have to say, I understand that it's unacceptable for Taylor Swift to refer to her hundreds of millions of fans around the world as fans. I still find it a little bit cringy and a little bit weird. It sounds a little bit, they are my disciples. Anyway, Charlotte Llewellyn has asked the question, besides the unknown, what is your biggest fear? Now, when you say besides the unknown, Charlotte, are you referring to the fact that I often talk about fear of the fact that we don't know, or are you just using that as a phrase? Because I've talked in the past about the fact that it is quite insane, this elephant in the room, that as we're all walking around every single day, it is the cruelest trick that the world has played on us, that it puts us on the planet and says, we're going to let you all decide how all this ends up and why you're here. Maybe you're here for 10 years, maybe you're here for 20, maybe you're here for 50, maybe you're here for 100 more. Maybe this is just a tiny little percentage of the billions of years that you're going to spend on the planet in the greater, higher power and the universe, blah, 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 blah. But you're not going to know. And you're going to die today. Is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be, well, you don't know. It's amazing that we've all managed. If we can compartmentalize that extremely traumatic fact, to me, all of our lives sound to me like the plot of a really terrifying Stephen King sci-fi novel / movie, like one of his good ones, 1 in 3, we'll call it. Funny, isn't it, those writers that reach the point where they don't have an editor, or rather, they hire an editor who doesn't tell them to edit anything that they write. They literally just write every. Do we know? Is there anyone in the publishing industry that listens to this? No. I mean, again, we're talking about like Charlie Kaufman talking about the concept of AI and how what Hollywood has always done has essentially been AI. And James Patterson obviously has been using fake writers or other writers to write his work for years. Is it fair to say that we all assume that, for example, Danielle Steele books and probably James Patterson's books are now being written by AI? Is that a fact? Yeah. Do we know? Okay. Sorry. Answer your question, Charlotte. Jesus, I'm on a ramble today. Well, that's what we signed up for, isn't it? Besides the unknown, what is your greatest fear? I have many fears. Obviously, there's the obvious biggest fear, which would be very obvious for anyone that's a parent, or anyone that has parents, or anyone that, essentially, we all have the same biggest fears in life. And again, it's another fact that we just all compartmentalized. But sometimes when you've got voices in your head or insecurities or anxieties, it's hard to silence those things. But essentially, the greatest fear, obviously, I believe, is losing people that you love. Obviously, that's the greatest fear. I am scared of everything else. Also, I say everything. I'm not scared of, like, I can get into, like, swim in a cold river. The river this morning was absolutely beautiful. Went out on the kayaks. River and I went out about 7 a.m. That cliche, people go, the river, the water. You could, what's that phrase? You can cut it with ice. It looks like you could cut it. Don't know what that means. I mean, you could also cut choppy water too. Why was they say that? Oh, do they mean because it looks flat like ice? I don't know. I don't understand a lot of phrases. Besides the unknown, what is my biggest fear? Phrases that I don't understand or can't remember. My greatest claustrophobia. I'm claustrophobic. I'm terrified of heights. Absolutely terrified of heights. I'll never forget, Charlotte, a time my mum and I were in one of those Are they called cable cars here as well? You know, when you're on like that box, they're like a box that's on like a piece of string and it goes across like a ginormous cliff/canyon. I mean, who on earth goes into that business and goes, right? I mean, I'm worried about. I'm worried when I do a show, when I organise a show and it's on me, like I'm the promoter, which is most of them. Um, like I worry about that many people being in a room and like someone falling over or someone getting hurt or obviously in England it was been more likely, but a fight kicking off. The thought of going into a business, I mean, again, I mean, I've got the utmost respect for anyone that goes into a business like building children's playground equipment or building roller coasters or putting together. I mean, it's one thing that the Disney world's got the infrastructure and the safety experts presumably in place. When you go to the X, and this isn't to kind of disparage anyone, but you turn up at the X and someone's cobbled together this ride that's about to turn you upside down and hurtle you towards the ground at 5,000 miles an hour with your 3-year-old sat next to you. And it's been this piece of equipment's been dragged around the country, dismantled, remantled, potentially by different people every single time. You know, what is to say a screw hasn't fallen out of it? And we get on it and go, oh, well, give it a go. And yet the rest of our time, anyway. So I'm very scared of heights. Charlotte is the is the answer. Bill Goff has asked, "Isn't abnormal the new normal?" And Lisa Prophet, dear Lisa, thank you by the way for messaging me the other day. You have such a gorgeous family, Lisa, by the way, and I can't wait to meet them all in person. And you kindly said you will be there at the Rebecca Cohen on the 17th of April. I can't wait. What's normal? Good point. I would say, I mean, I guess Bill and Lisa are kind of saying the same thing, which is Bill is saying isn't abnormal the new normal. Yes. Lisa is saying what's normal. I guess maybe Bill meant the traditional idea of normal. But basically, isn't that a wonderful thing that we've created a world now where nothing's normal? And by that, it's not the new normal. It's not politically, but I guess if we're going to go by like what people, if in the old days, it'd be like, well, that person's normal, that person's abnormal. And now it's like back in the day, it'd be like, well, that person's, to use vernacular from the 90s of the time. People would, again, this isn't to condone it, but when someone would say like that person's, well, I guess I won't use the word because it's not my place to. That person's challenged, but obviously they would use the R word back then. Or in England, it was the S word, which I will tell you just in case you don't know what I'm talking about. The I guess the British version of retarded was spasticated was the word that playground insult that people would use. And we've created a society now where we don't find it, where it's not only acceptable to be rude about people who are different to us, whether it be sexually or apart from politically suddenly it's okay to literally hate everyone who isn't thinking the exact same way. I like to think we've created a world where a very accepting world, and I guess the best example I can use for that is my children, whereby when I was in school, I will tell you that I used every homophobic epithet under the sun. I would definitely would have used both those offensive words to describe abilities. I pretty much had no sensitivity to anything and was very rarely picked up or questioned. That behavior was very rarely picked up or questioned by a teacher or indeed another student or indeed a parent. And now our children are lecturing us on the right things to say and do. And maybe that's just our children, which is amazing considering maybe this is the wonderful thing about having monsters in power saying and doing the worst things that it's not going to, hopefully praying, not going to have the effect of making people go, well, that's what I need to do to succeed. Hopefully it's going to say to people, that's not cool. Isn't abnormal the new normal? I guess I'm going to agree with both of you and say there is no normal anymore. Let's come up with a new word. Answers on a postcard, please. Caitlin Dean, thank you for your messages this morning. Looking forward to seeing you day after tomorrow. What makes a great show for you as a performer? What control do you have over that? See you in Campbellton. I will see you on Friday. Caitlin, can't wait. Hope you're having fun there. I know you're there already. What makes a great show for me as a performer? It's a connection to the audience. Oh, I see. The second part of your question is very clever. Well, they're both clever, but what makes a great show as a performer is a connection to the audience. It's when I go up and the audience is electric and I feel like I can play around. And you've seen me both do well and not do well. And there's examples of gigs that are fine. An example of this I would use would be, and you were there. Perfect examples. I believe I'm right in saying, Caitlin, that were you there the Friday night before? St. John High in April this year was a fine show in that I probably did 80, 90 minutes. The audience laughed. I did a joke. They laughed. They laughed. And, 700 people in there. That's a big sound. Very good. There was never a point where I was completely relaxed, having the time of my life, playing around. Whereas the night before that at Long Bay, and Long Bay often can be a tricky room to play, it was an absolute. I love it when I'm just playing around, the audience is laughing, I'm laughing, and I'm basically being my comedic self, which is not the real me, which is not me normal, but I've just completely lost all inhibitions and I'm just having fun. And basically the audience, by them being in that mood, they're giving you permission to play, and by play you're then being experimental, and it creates this magical back and forth. And what the genius of the second part of your question, what control do you have over that, is that interestingly I would say none. In that, yes, you've got to turn up and bring the goods to the gig, but whether the audience is absolutely on fire, weirdly enough, is somewhat on them. In that, and they can't control that. It's just mood and a thousand other circumstances, extenuating circumstances surrounding the day, the environment. To use that example, use that example of April. In April, I believe I had a night at Long Bay where Nancy Regan and her crew came to film, and for whatever reason, possibly because of the cameras, it was a tricky-ish gig. Like, I would do a joke, it would get a bit of a titter, move on. It would just, not a death by any stretch the imagination, but not. It was just do a line, get a laugh, move on. That was it. And then on that Friday night before Long Bay, maybe I arrived without any, less inhibitions. Maybe I knew this was my chance to play because I had a big show the night before. But, all the things that should have been working against me were working against me. It was Friday night. It was very bright in there. Essentially, we're in a park, in a brewery, in a parking lot. And all the doors and windows are open, so you can basically see the parking lot, see the cars coming and going. But the thing I had zero control over is that when lovely Lindsay from Long Bay went out to introduce me, the crowd went absolutely wild. So they arrived ready to go. So the answer is I have no control over it. That's what makes a great show. But my job is I always turn up ready to do the absolute best of my ability. But yes, weirdly, a lot of it is on the audience. Thank you very much, Greg. I hope that answers the question. Nathan Dimitrov, who I will also see Friday. Thank you for everything you're doing and have done and continue to do with Awesome Fest. Best practices for getting into festivals. Definitely the wrong person to ask, in that other than your lovely festival, I rarely, if ever, get booked. I don't get booked for any of the big Canadian comedy festivals, but the honest answer is everything you think. For example, Winnipeg. I'll grab a piece of paper. I've got it right here. Winnipeg Comedy Festival are accepting submissions right now. So the best practices for getting into festivals is there's no obviously trickery to it other than record tapes, record sets, keep applying, and eventually might be lucky. And really, it kind of is about luck, because there's 100 or 200 people that can do what we all do, and the bookers might like us or might not like us. I'll give you some examples of this. Andrew Albert once. I remember shortly before he passed, Andrew Albert got the Halifax Comedy Festival. Maybe in the year before he passed, he had been asking them for 10, 15, 20 years, but never lost his temper. Never, well, as far as I know, maybe behind closed doors, whatever, but never grew frustrated with this. Just year by year, plugging away, doing gigs, filming a set, every year sending it off, and then out of the blue, after a decade or more being completely ignored, he got an email back from the bookers saying, "We'd love to have you." And it really meant a lot to him. Personally, and I'm not just saying this because this is my advice, my best practice for mental health stability is somewhat to stop. I mean, by all means, do it and have fun doing it. It's of absolutely no consequence to me to do those big festivals, based on the fact that they have built a model which is designed to make Canadian comedians think that doing this thing is going to help their career. In some cases, maybe it will, maybe it doesn't. It's not going to make a difference to mine. I simply go out and build my own audience. And so, I mean, if the question was, which it isn't, but if the question was best practice for not success, but making a living in Canadian comedy, it would be go out, do shows, get good, do good shows, and people. But to give you an example, I mean, I'm playing Rebecca Cohen in Halifax in April. That's 10 months of promoting, or however many months, 8 months of promoting. I will probably think about that show and the promotion of that show every single day for the next 6 months. There'll be something I'll do related to that show next 6 months. Last weekend, I played Cow Bay, a 60-seater in a 400 community in rural-ish Nova Scotia. The conversation for that show began 2 years ago. Now, the irony is you go and do a show in Cow Bay to 60 people in a beautiful little village. You make more money playing to 60 people than you do headlining an entire weekend at Toronto Yuck Yucks, and you don't get your travel or accommodation covered while you're there. So the DIY grassroots approach is the approach. This is how I've built whatever it is I do and have, and I love it. I've worked out what makes me happy, and what makes me happy is driving to a place like Cow Bay, staying with some lovely people, doing a beautiful show, and everyone having it so much fun that they all say we'll come when you come again, and then they also say we will drive to the big city and see you when you play a big run. So all of that is say, best practice for getting to festivals: just be professional, keep plugging away, film your sets, send it off, write a polite email. Don't get disheartened. Don't get put off. Don't become. I mean, I guess you could say, don't become like me. I mean, the thing is, I'm not jaded or angry about it. It's just not for me. I also know it doesn't make me happy. I know that I can go and do those festivals, and it doesn't make me happy because I'm not going in with this belief that it's going to change my career, because I don't need my career changed. My career is exactly where I want it to. I don't want it to be any different. Plus, there is I guess those kind of shows create anxiety and nerves, which are good, but I prefer the anxiety and nerves that I get from these other shows. All of that said, Winnipeg Comedy Festival, you may know this if you've ever seen the TV show on CBC, although no one seems to have heard of it, but essentially they do themed shows. So you send in, they have a list of themes. So for example, go to their website now. They're accepting submissions until October 15th. The festival takes place next year in April. You basically go through the list of themes and you send them 8 to 10 minute sets. Now, the themes are Chip Off the Old Block, Crossed Wires, My Best Life, New to Town, You Had to Be There. So you send 8 minute sets, send them a polite email, send them your best 10 minutes clean. Send clean sets would be another piece of advice. Again, not my place to disparage or question any of these processes. I will say, though, that last year I invested quite heavily in sending off clips for that festival, and they say to send it, a link on YouTube. Two of the videos still have 0 watches, so they weren't seen. So that's that for me. But I wish everyone the best of luck, and that to me would be the best bet. And that's kind of why I pretty much have moved away from doing. I mean, again, the reason I'm doing this festival this weekend is because I know and love Nathan Dimitrov. I've worked with Mark Savoie before, who is also a great man. Actually, Nathan and I did a show for him at the Salmon Festival in Camden in 2019. I knew it would be a super amount of fun. So yeah, I work with people I've worked with before who are. Does that answer the question? I think so. Stephen Martin's asked the question, ever thought about doing a comedy workshop on writing, performance, presentation, how to get into the business, tips for up-and-coming comedians? I have done such things before. I don't know how helpful it would be, Stephen, because but I would be happy to offer advice on all of those things, and I believe I have actually. I guess I've answered some of that just now. But if you want me to answer any of those questions, I will happily take out a chunk of next week's podcast devoted to any one of those. I think I've just done about. I mean, how to get into the business. Obviously, it's just get on stages. Tips for up and coming comedian. I asked Jimmy Carr that question, and Jimmy Carr said an answer which I found very frustrating at the time when I was about a year into doing stand up. And I was looking for a shortcut, but I said to Jimmy, any advice, blah, blah, blah. And he just went gig, 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 gig. And I stand by that, I'm afraid. Get on stage as often as possible, doing anything you can. Then, I mean, when I moved here to New Brunswick, there was so few shows happening that I even did stand up at like a high school fashion show at Rossay High. I mean, just anything. Jessica Jill has asked the question, and I hope that answers. But any other questions you'd like me to answer, Stephen, I'd be happy to do so, my friend. Specifically related to any one of those things. Jessica Jill has asked it, has there ever been a topic that was off limits for you? I guess now there is, and it's, I mean, the topic that I mentioned earlier. The name that I'm looking at on my list of during the week, when I read interesting newspaper articles under the covers, because that's the one good. I hate the lack of print and the news being on phones, but I didn't used to be able to read the Guardian newspaper due to the size and the noise. That's what she said. Under the covers of my bed. But now I can read like 100 Guardian articles before it's even 5 a.m. every morning. Now, the name I'm reading at right now, looking at all my notes that I've been making, I sometimes make notes. So there are things, I mean, right now, politics is completely off limits for me. And I would say partly because no one wants to hear about it, but here comes comedy shows to get away with it. They listen to comedy podcasts to get away from it. Not that I know this is a very comedic podcast. But yeah, right now, politics is basically off limits. I went to do an interview with a well-respected broadcasting corporation a few months ago about the Kingston Peninsula. Was asked a brief question about something relating to down south, and then that part of the interview got pulled out, turned into a written news piece, put online. Which annoyingly to this day is still the first thing that comes up when you Google my name, which I found out at the border. It caused a lot of trouble at the border. Also, I got a ton of hate mail from Trumpers. So politics is the answer that's off limits. But otherwise, but in normal times, going back there we go. There's the discussion of what's normal. I guess normal times was before now. Author Andrew Butters has asked, "What's the most fun you've ever had reading?" For me, it was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Every page of that book was a joy. Great question, Andrew. I will read that. I mean, certainly reading your books brings me great joy. My favourite read of all time was Trainspotting by Irvine Welsh. Remains to be. Interestingly, I've just finished Men in Love, which is the direct follow-up to Trainspotting, which has just been published now. It is immediately after the end of Trainspotting. I'm not spoiling anything by revealing that Mark Renton runs off with the cash that him and Begbie and Sick Boy and Spud just made from the drug deal, which they did with the character that's played by Keith Allen in the Danny Boyle movie of Trainspotting, still one of the greatest British movies of all time, up there with Life is Sweet, up there with The Long Good Friday, up there with Get Carter, up there with is the Lie Me? No, Lie Me is an American movie. Sexy Beast would be another great British movie. What else are other great British movies? I mean, Naked, 1993, Mike Leigh movie. Weird how it's funny. I still am into movies, but there's something about the period between 89 and 95 that I can always get a movie date spot on correct. Anyway, Men in Love is the direct follow-up to Trainspotting, so it appears in order. Trainspotting, Men in Love, which is very good, overlong, class system, sick boys getting married. Of course, the main problem being that Renton's on the run, and because the book appears between Trainspotting and Porno, and we know because of Porno, which was a very disappointing original follow-up to Trainspotting, sequel to, it was made into the movie T2, they called it, weird, because T2 is, of course, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Was that 1990? What am I saying? Basically, you don't get any scenes with all four characters together, of course. But Begbie is as hilarious as but so Trainspotting is my favorite book of all time. However, the most fun I ever had reading was actually the Trainspotting sequel, which is the sequel to Dead Men. Sorry, it's the sequel to Porno. And I believe chronologically it appears after The Blade Artist, which was a Trainspotting universe book solely focused on Begbie, although I believe some of the other characters appear within it, including, I think, Mark Renton in the very final scene. Dead Men's Trousers is the most I've ever laughed reading a book. It is in the pantheon, in the canon of the Trainspotting characters. I believe it's the last in the series. It is. The scene where they are attempting to remove, if you can believe it, you know that thing where you sell parts of people's body illegal? Not you. I'm not saying you do this, but when people we know take kidneys or livers or hearts out and then flog them to someone on the black market. What's that called? There's a scene where they do that to one of the characters, and it is absolutely hilarious. Sick boy smoking a cigarette with his friend's stomach open, with ash falling into the. It doesn't sound comedy gold. I've never laughed so hard. Clayton Carr, have you ever tried hunting waterfowl, deer, or such? I think it would be interesting seeing you use a duck or a goose call. I agree with you, Clayton. The actual hunting part, i.e. the firing of the gun, I'm afraid I couldn't do. And again, it is not for me to criticize anyone that does. And again, living in a rural part of the world, and again, where do I think we get our food from? I personally couldn't or can't do it. However, me in the process of hunting would be a very, very interesting thing to do, and I agree, Clayton, we should do that. We need to make this happen. Anyone? Troy Morehouse, hope you're well, my friend. It was lovely to see you. I last saw you with Michelle at the BMO in June, I believe it was. How many licks to reach the center of a Tootsie Pop? Okay. Revelation time. I've never eaten a Tootsie. Is that what? Am I thinking the right thing? The Tootsie sweets, treats, candy, as you call it here. Candy. Saying sweets there are certain words that are better in Britain. Sweets are better than candy. Lollipop, way better than popsicle. Popsicle. Some of the shit that you say in this country is truly pretty gross, and it's not really your fault. You're taking America's things. Take more from Britain. Britain is more your vibe. Bring the phrase lollipop is what you like to suck. See, I've already said that's what she said twice in this episode, so I'm not going to say it a third time. It'd be cheap. Mina Lavina, I hope you are well, my friend. You've asked, I've been dying to do a satirical East Coast kitchen. Which character? Like, I'm sure I'll read your card. I'll read your card, boy. But the spirits are saying that you're left with a twofer by your garage door and it's all gone cold now. You should be shamed, bud. A, what do you think of my accent? B, I'm aware at the end there it got a little bit racist. However, I guess an important question is, can it be racist if you can't determine which accent that was? I'm going to play a game for you guys. Here's about this. I'm going to read that out again, which obviously what I'm trying to do is an East Coast Canadian accent. Obviously not accurately. I'm trying to do it stereotypically, however, also doing it highly incorrectly. see how many different nationalities you can spot in this, and maybe if you do spot more than 3, then maybe you're the racist. Okay. I've been dying to do a theoretical East Coast Kitchen Witch character, which sounds a great idea, Mina, and you should do it, and I'd love to help any way I can. Sure, I'll read your card, boy, but the spirit is saying that you left a twofer by your garage door, and it's all gone cold now. You should be shamed, bud. There's a part of me that thinks that was quite good, but I don't really trust myself on creative things. See, if you all wrote to me and said, "Oh my goodness, James, that was the best, say, Newfoundland or Canadian accent we've ever heard," there's a part of me. I guess that's what an echo chamber is. That's what so many people are living in, that echo chamber of believing shit that they want to believe. You're a genius. Everything you say is great. Oh, great. I'll keep running the world. That's one of the weirdest things about the situation we're in. The fact that basically, I said this last week, can things get worse? They got worse, and they keep getting worse. Someone's saying that they can literally stop the 2 big wars happening in the world, and then they literally make them worse once those leaders work out that all you have to do is turn up, suck up to you, tell you what you want to hear, leave, and then do 10 times worse things, and you don't do anything about it. Anyway, I was watching I don't know what it was. I was in last week. Okay, I'm going to do my last week in 3 minutes to see if we can do it. When did I record the podcast? It was last Wednesday. So that was my 19th wedding anniversary. That day, drove to Halifax, went to the Chandler Sales opening of their MillerKnoll showroom, then went to the Sandman Hotel in Dartmouth because the Sutton place was full, and I was absolutely blown away by how lovely the Sandman was, and the team there took great care of me and left. And Eli from the Sutton place even told them about the fact that I'm always worried about losing my voice. So in my room was the kettle, the honey, and the lemon slices. How thoughtful is that? Thursday morning, got up, went to Global News, did a wonderful interview. I say it's wonderful. It's not my place to say it was wonderful, but he was wonderful. Interview with Paul Brothers about the Halifax tour date. Thank you, Paul. I had a wonderful time. Then hot-footed it over to Nimbus Publishing to have a meeting with Nimbus about a children's book I am writing. Then went over to Rebecca Cohen box office to pick up tickets for my sponsors for the show, the amazing people at Audi Halifax. God bless you, Audi. Love you, Audi. And I actually have a brand new Audi car for the week, which I'm driving, thanks to Gary and Lisa. And that Gary and Lisa dropped off the car on Monday, and then also came to the show at Long Bay. Went to see my friend Mary at Audi to give them their sponsors tickets. If you are buying a car from Audi Halifax in the next couple of weeks, you can get free tickets to my show. Then went to host the Atlantic Interior Design Awards at Pier 21, which was very fun. Received kind feedback that if I ever did it again, they want to hear more stand-up. I tried to keep the brief was to keep the stand-up to a minimum and make the focus on the winners, and rightly so. And I will say massive congratulations to TOS Solutions for winning in St. John, for winning 2 awards for OMG offices in St. John and Moncton, and massive congratulations to all the winners, in fact, which I should have in front of me, but I don't, because I'm actually just whizzing through this very, very quickly. But they were a pleasure to work with the Atlantic Interior Design Association of, I'm assuming, Atlantic Canada. Friday morning, got up, went to see Katie Kelly at CTV for an interview that will air one day this week. Then hot-footed it back to St. John to drop off the rental car. Then went to Riverside Golf Club that night for a drink. Couple of drinks. I'd had 7 days off, I believe, and so I had a couple of Radlers. And my son went to Harbour Station to watch his friend play hockey. Saturday morning, got up and went to help my beloved sister-in-law Judy move into her new house. My son's helped. Lovely Laurie Carl was there. Hi, Laurie. I actually need to phone you in a minute about the. You probably listen to this, but anyway, Laurie, it was lovely to see you at Judy's, and I'm going to phone you straight after I finish recording this with something relating to Steve Patterson, which I'll talk about on the show next week. They went to Party City to plan out our Halloween costumes. Then we did a bike ride around Rockwood Park. There was a car show going on. Had a wonderful time at Rockwood Park. Bumped into Julie Tower, who, as you all know, former owner of Chuckles and still owner of Punchlines comedy management and events, and we are doing the next Romero House fundraiser at Lily's. While I was at Lily's, had a couple of nice pints of Radler and also it had the lobster flat road, which I highly recommend. Lily's and Lily Lake is one of my favorite places. Sounds like I've turned into a robot. I don't know why. That's the only way I think I can talk quickly and get through things quickly, is to suddenly turn into a robot. I don't know why. I need to go back to talking like a normal human being. As you all know, Rockwood Park was designed by the same architect that designed New York Central Park. Do you know that? You should do. Then me and River went for a run, which he beat me at. And then for some reason, millions of people I know, including my friend Lauren, drove past and saw me losing to River. Saturday night, we were supposed to go out for dinner for our 19th wedding anniversary, but obviously then I realised that it was Canelo versus Crawford on Netflix, so watched that, although the fight didn't start till 1 a.m, so only Hunter and I stayed up for it, so actually could have gone out for dinner. Did anyone see the Canelo versus Crawford fight? Absolutely phenomenal. Essentially, as always, the hype was all the usual. History is going to be made in Vegas. I mean, it kind of was a little bit made. Not, I mean, other things have happened in the last week that I think are going to go down historically, but maybe this is a more positive thing. If you can say two men beating the shit out of each other is a positive thing, which in the world we live in, frankly, it is. Right now, my wife and I actually watched prior to this The Girlfriend, which is a new series on Prime, which is very entertaining, although terrible ending, which is always very frustrating when you've devoted 7 hours to something. Anyway, again, they say a record crowd of over 70,000 fans packed the Allegiant Stadium. I believe it was. It's only a record in that stadium for a boxing. I mean, it's all these things, the record and the undisputed. I mean, anyway, the point is, here's my Terence Crawford, as you may know, was the underdog in this. Canelo is one of the greatest boxers in the world. So basically, in Vegas, Saturday night, live streaming on Netflix, who have basically revolutionized the way that boxing is viewed. Because after Jake Paul and Tyson, not a fight, but a fight happened, 140 million people tuned into that. Then there was Serrano and Taylor, Katie Taylor, the amazing UK Irish boxer. Both those fights obviously promoted by Jake Paul, interesting enough, of course, because they're on Netflix. Traditionally, boxing was pay-per-view. And now they're on Netflix. This didn't get actually as many views in a win for feminism. This fight, Canelo versus Crawford, didn't get as many views as Katie Taylor versus Serrano. Point being, Terence Bud Crawford went up 2 whole weight classes to fight Canelo Alvarez and actually outpointed him to become the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. There's a lot of words in that sentence, aren't there? Which is possibly why there's so many undisputed super this, super that, middle, upper, lower. Oi, bash, bash, bush. It's the super middleweight, upper, lower, best boxer in the world who happens to be left-handed with the toenail missing. There's a lot of but in this case, there's not. It's not really many caveats, is it? He's the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. A record crowd. Almost all the crowd were cheering for Canelo, but Crawford silenced the arena with basically what can be described as a masterclass in boxing. This is only the 3rd loss of Canelo's long career. Canelo is like an old school boxer in that he has basically fought everyone that's asked him to fight. A lot of these boxers stay at the top of their game by refusing to fight. Some people, like Conor McGregor, refuse to fight anyone for 10 years, although they are saying that, I know he's not a boxer, but Conor McGregor is said to be actually finally fighting Michael Chandler in the grounds of the White House, because Donald Trump right now is organizing 2 men in underpants to beat shit and wrestle with each other in the lawn of the White House, because there's nothing else happening in the world that needs to be tended to right now. But basically, the only rounds were kind of somewhat close. I mean, you can see Canelo coming back, but from the 6th, Crawford just took control. Footwork counted. It was amazing. So no one knows what next. No one could really. Canelo admitted after the fight that he couldn't actually figure out Crawford out. Crawford ever just said, yeah, this is what we're supposed to do. And interestingly, that's 42 wins he's had. And right before the fight, he went to have a watch engraved with 42-0, which seemed ridiculously arrogant until he then did it. And then that was that. So I'm going to go. There's other stuff on my list. Next week, I'll be talking about a amazing book that I read by Pierre Novelli called Why Can't I Just Enjoy Things? A Comedian's Guide to Autism. Very enlightening, very intelligent. I've actually been meaning to talk about it on the podcast for a few weeks, but obviously keep running out of time. Him and Phil Wang talk about something which is this concept of lived experience, that we should only write or talk about things that are our own lived experience. But anyway, I will be back next week. I'm also halfway through watching the Charlie Sheen documentary. Have opinions on that and him. Pardon me, I've managed to get the whole hour without burping in your ears. I just burped. Canelo versus Crawford. So that was the fight. Hunter and I stayed out, which was a lovely bonding experience. It was really actually a perfect weekend. Sunday morning, the sunken shipwreck boat from outside my house was finally rescued. We had front row seats. I say front row seats, barely. Hundreds of people gathering to watch it. I say hundreds, dozens, but by Ross's standards, hundreds. Then my wife and I, we did finally get our anniversary dinner. We drove to the cafe, the Cedar Cafe at Cornhill Nursery. Genuinely one of the most beautiful places if you haven't been. It's stunning. Garden centre, beautiful food. My kids did the Terry Fox run Monday. Usual things. YMCA did the Long Bay gig last night. Obviously, as I mentioned, Debaters St. John. That's it. That's the podcast. It was supposed to be a quickie. That's what she. No, you're above that, James. Tomorrow. Charlotte and then Campbellton. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'm sure there's other stuff I was supposed to talk about. I guess that's it. I'm not going to add anything else other than to say, by the way, actually, I think I mentioned I did a show at Cornhill the other week, and someone emailed me, and thank you very much for this. Her name's Jess. She moved from BC to Sussex, New Brunswick. I'm not again, no compliments on this because I'm not an American podcaster, but she attended my show at Cornhill. Said some very nice things, which again, not going to read. Suffice to say, thinks I'm amazing. That's a joke. That's me doing it's funny. I think my algorithm has finally got the gist that I don't want to keep seeing Bud Chrysler and Tom Segura clips on my feed. It's weird how my Facebook feed thinks that I love Burt Chrysler and Tom Segura, whereas the opposite, it could not be further from the truth. And it also thinks that I want help with getting sober, which I do not. It's very strange. Do you want to get these weird videos popping up all the time about things? Anyway, Jess very kindly says, after your show, I started writing a list of all the things I've noticed about East Coasters that confuse me or drive me nuts. First, they call dinner lunch and supper dinner. So confusing. Why isn't it Brinner instead of brunch? Good point. Pluralization of anywheres, nowheres, somewheres. Very true. I also hate that with like the shop Kent. It's Kent. And people go, I'm going to Kent's. But then they switch it around when they're having beers. Or I only had 10 beer. I only had 10 beer. The other things, phrases. This is me talking now. Phrases where they go, like phrases that only Kingston Peninsula men say, like jumping Jesus, holy Moses. Where did those phrases come from? Back to Jess's list, they say right instead of very. I got right drunk. Jarred meat, never heard of it, although I get offered it everywhere. I guess I had spam in a tin. A tin, not a jar. Obsessed with something called mustard pickles. Everyone knows someone who makes it. It's jarred relish and mustard, but you can't talk with England. We can't talk, that's true, with mushy peas and brown sauce. Good point. Everyone seems to have, this is good. Everyone here seems to have one grandma that is decked out like a Nashville Elvis. Where do they find these outfits? Very good point. Potholes. Used to think people were constantly driving drunk, swerving all over the road. They were actually the sober ones missing all the potholes. Drunk drivers drive straight through potholes. That's a good point. It's the way to spot a drunk driver. They're going through the potholes. Everyone's mum or grandma makes the best no-bake cherry cheesecake. Very true. Very like the UK. No one likes vegetables in a salad. It doesn't exist without potato. It's very true. You've been here 5 years. I don't know where. And the directions thing is so true. She says, I don't know where Jimmy's drunk uncle used to live, or the corner where Menzies hit that moose in '98. No one knows their civic address. Not even people that have been there their whole lives. So true. Thank you so much. For writing, and I hope to get to meet and chat with you in person, Jess. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Shoot me messages for next week. I'll see you then. I've been James Manager. You've been you. I love you very much. Bosh, lovely jubbly. Thanks for listening, Ramblers.
Manager's Weekly Ramble.